we're going to play around with integers and the number line. Let's look at some distances and numbers on the number line. If I ask you to start at 0 and go up by 3 steps, where do you end up? 1, 2, 3, you end up over here, 3, which is the number 3 on the number line. So starting at 0 and walking up 3 steps ends you up at number 3 on the number line. If you start at 0 and walk down 2 steps, you end up over here, and that is -2 on the number line. So, if you started at 0 and you went up 4 steps, you'd end up at 4 on the number line. If you started at 0 and went down 5 steps, you would end up over here at -5 on the number line. If you start at 2 on the number line and go down 2 steps, you'll end up at 0. If you start at -3 on the number line and go up 3 steps, you'll end at 0. So how far is it from 3 to -2? Well, we can go and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps, but also we could be a bit smarter and say, look at what we've been using already up until now and see that from 3 to 0, that's 3 steps, and from 0 to -2, that's 2 steps, and so in total it is 5 steps from 3 to -2 on the number line. Try this one for yourself. How far is it from 4 to -3? Pause the video and try it yourself. Okay, so 4 would be about here on the number line, and -3, negatives are below the 0, -3 would be around there. And then we can straight away use the idea that from 4 down to 0 is 4 steps, and from 0 down to -3 is 3 steps. So we've gone 4 steps and 3 steps, and so in total we have gone 7 steps. The question now can be used for much bigger numbers. So how many steps are there from -22 to 31? Well, 31, now this number line has got no markings on it, so I'm just going to make a sort of say, okay, look, if 31 definitely has to be above the 0, right? And it's over there. And if I put that over there, -22, well, that's got to be below the 0 and not quite as far below as that 31 is. So it'll be, as the 31 is above, so -22 will be around there. But the idea I can use is the same one I've used before, which is that where is 31? It's 31 steps above the 0. And where is 22? -22. -22 is 22 steps below the 0. So to go from -22 up to 31, we can do 22 steps to get to 0, and then 31 steps to get to 31. And so in total, we've got 22 plus 31 steps, which is going to be 53 steps. We're going to work on adding and subtracting using the number line. We're going to start with a calculation that you probably did way back when in grade 1, but we're going to use it to remind ourselves of the steps. So, what we need to do when we need to do a calculation like 5 subtract 3, we need to see that we're going to start at 5. Then we need to know, are we going to go up or down on the number line? If it's subtraction, we'll go down. If it's addition, we're going to be adding, so we'll go up. And then we need to know how many steps we go up or down, and in this case it'll be down 3 steps. Let's have a look. We establish our starting point of 5, that we're going to go down, and then we start going down our 3 steps. And we end off at 2. So 5 subtract 3 gives us 2. Okay, let's have a look at another calculation. 2 subtract 8. Again, we're going to go through the steps of where do we start? Are we going up or down, depending on addition or subtraction, and how many steps? But we don't want to do our 8 steps individually. And as we've discussed in the past, instead of going through the 8 steps individually, we're going to do a jump to 0 so that we do the steps in a slightly more efficient way. Let's have a look at how it works. 2 subtract 8, we start at 2, subtract, so we're going down, and we need to go 8 steps down. That's 2 steps to 0, and we need to go 6 more steps to make it 8 steps in total, and so we end at -6. So 2 subtract 8 is -6. What about -2 subtract 3? Well, we'll start at -2, and we've got to go down, and we've got to go down 3 steps, and that will end us at -5. So -2 subtract 3 gives us -5. What about -7 plus 3? Well, start point is -7, but this time, because it's a plus, we're going up, and it's 3 steps up, which will end us at -4. Now, how about -5 plus 9? Well, in this case, we start at -5, and we need to go up because we're adding, and we need to go up 9 steps. We're going to jump 5 steps to 0. We've got to do 4 more steps because we want to do 9 steps in total, and so we will end up at 4. We're going to continue thinking about addition and subtraction on the number line, but in this case, we're going to have to fill in the missing number. So let's start by looking at this calculation here. We're being asked -5 plus what will get us to 3. So if we think through the process, they're telling us the starting point is -5. They're telling us that we are adding, and we know that where we want to end up is we want to end up there at 3. So how many steps do we need to go to get from -5 all the way to 3? Well, to get from -5 to 0 is 5 steps, and then to get to 3 is another 3 steps. So in total, we have gone 8 steps to get from -5 to 3. Okay, let's have a look at this one. I'd like you to try that one on your own first, and then we'll go over it together. Okay, so our starting point for this one is 4, and we know we're going down because we're subtracting. And we know we want to end up at -2, so how far have we gone down? Well, we went 4 down to get to 0, and 2 more down to get to -2, so in total we've gone 6 down. So 4 subtract 6 gives me -2. Let's have a look at these ones. Slightly more difficult because we're not even giving you the starting point this time, but we can figure it out. If we have a look at this one here, we don't know the starting point. We've started somewhere, added 4, and ended up at 3. So let's mark on where we've ended up. We've ended up at 3. We were going up from somewhere, and we were going up 4 steps. So from somewhere, we went up 4 steps and ended up at 3. Well, if we want to know where that somewhere is, all we can do is go back down 4 steps, and we'll see where we started. So let's go back down 4 steps. So that is 3 steps and 1 more step. That's 4 steps. So I must have started at -1. Okay, try this one for yourself, and then we will go over it. All right, so you knew that your ending point needed to be at -2, and you've come down 6 steps to end up at -2. So somehow you've started somewhere and you've come down 6 steps to end at -2. If we want to find out where you started, we have to go back up the 6 steps to see where you started. So let's go back up the 6 steps. That's 2 steps to 0 and 4 more steps to make 6 steps in total. So we must have started at 4, come down 6 steps to end up at -2. We're going to just play around a bit with seeing where a calculation is likely to end up as a positive or negative answer. And this is going to be a practice we want to get into, because before we actually go and do all the calculations involving numbers, let's actually just see if we can figure out whether we're going to end up with a positive or negative as the answer. Let's look at a calculation like 653 subtract 789. Now, I don't want you to do the calculation, we just want to say, is it positive or negative? So 653, say we say that's over there on the number line, and now what we want to do is we want to subtract, so go down 789. Well, if we went down 653, we'd end at 0. But we don't only want to go down 653, we want to go down 789, which is going down even more than 653, so we'll definitely end up in the negative. In contrast, I hope it's quite easy for you to see, if say we did something like this one, what we would be doing is starting at 653 and only going down 282 steps, which is just a small amount, and so we'd end up being positive. Okay, try these two for yourself. I don't want the answer, just for you to tell me whether your answer will be positive or negative. Pause the video and try now. So hopefully for the first one, you saw that if you were at -354 and you needed to go up by 509 steps, well, going up by 354 steps would get you to 0. So if you're going up by 509, you're going up even further, so you will end up in the positives. On the other hand, if you're at -354 and you subtract, it means you're going to go down, and if you're going down a further 509, well, anywhere where you go down from -354, you're going to still stay in the negatives, and so this answer will be negative. Over the next few videos, we're going to look at how we can use patterns that we observe to help us do some of our calculations with negative numbers more easily. To start, I'm going to take you back to grade 1. What's 2 plus 3? Okay, I'm sure you immediately know the answer is 5, but let's look at how that happens, because this is part of the pattern I want you to see. So our starting point is 2, we're adding, so we're going up, and we're going up by 3 steps, and we'll end at 5. Now, what about -2 subtract 3? Here we start at -2, but because we're subtracting, we're going down, and we're going down by 3 steps, and so we will end up at -5. Now, can you see what has happened here in the negatives is really kind of a mirror image of what's happening in the positives? So what we're seeing is that -2 subtract 3 is really just the same as what's happening with 2 plus 3, except it's happening in the negatives. And so, if we see -2 subtract 3, we know we're at -2 going down. It's going to have the same effect as being at 2 going up, but it is in the negatives. So how does that help me? Well, I'm very good at doing addition because I've been doing it since primary school. So I'm going to use that instead of the subtraction. So if I'm faced with a problem like this one, -14 subtract 23, I know that that means I must start at -14 and I must go down 23 steps. But I know that that's just going to be the mirror image of starting at 14 and going up 23 steps. So I know that this thing is going to give me the same answer as if I start at 14 and go up 23 steps, except obviously it's going to be negative. And 14 plus 23 is very easy, that's 37. And so here I know my answer will be negative 37. In this video we continue looking at patterns that'll help us to do our addition and subtraction with negative numbers more easily. Okay, I'm going to start you back in grade 1. What is 5 subtract 3? I hope that none of you struggled to immediately get the answer of 2. But now what would happen if I asked you to do 3 subtract 5? Well, let's just think about this first. If I do 3 subtract 5, firstly, am I going to end up with a positive or negative answer? Hopefully, immediately you knew that you are definitely going to end up with a negative answer. Now let's have a look at how we'd actually do this. If we can't do it immediately in our heads, we would say we start at 3. We are going down 5 steps. Well, let's go down those 5 steps. Well, jumping to 0 is a jump of 3 down. How much more do we need to go down? We need to go 2 more down, because in total we wanted to go 5 down. And so we can see that we end at negative 2. Okay, another example. 7 subtract 4. Positive or negative answer? Immediately you should know that's positive. And hopefully you remember your grade 1 work. 7 subtract 4 is going to give you 3 as the answer. Now what will happen if we do 4 subtract 7? Firstly, are we going to end up with a positive or negative answer? Hopefully you can immediately see we're going to end up with a negative answer. And what do? We start at 4. We know that we are going to be going down, and we're going to go down 7 steps. So let's jump down those 7 steps. 4 steps gets me to 0, and 3 more steps to make up my total of 7 steps will get me to negative 3. Can you see the pattern that I am seeing here? That if 7 minus 4 is 3, then 4 minus 7 will be negative 3. And we can write this by saying 4 subtract 7 is going to give me the same answer as 7 subtract 4, except it will be negative. So how does that help me? Well, if I wanted to do something like 43 subtract 68, I know my answer is going to be negative, and I know from that pattern I've just observed that it's just going to give me the same number part of the answer as 68 subtract 43, except be negative. And so 68 subtract 43 I know is 25, and so my answer here is negative 25.